Hello, welcome back to my series, The Decades of Action Challenge. Inspired by the Epic Film Challenge by Forker Ball and Razor Wire Reviews. They're going through a series called 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. At least Razor Wire is. Forker Ball, aka Ian, he mentioned recently in a video that he wasn't really doing those videos anymore. But, you know, he's still got those videos on his channel if you want to check them out. Same with Razor Wire. He's still doing those entries on a regular basis, so please do take a look at them if you'd like to. Like I said, they're going through a book called 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. And the basis for my series is a column on avclub.com called A History of Violence. The writer, Tom Breihan, is looking at the most important and influential action movie of each year, starting with 1968 and moving forward to the present. It's going to be 50 movies in total. This entry is, of course, on 1987, and he starts off his article by saying how tough it was to pick one. Three of the greatest, most iconic franchise starter movies in the genre's history came out that year, and that's only a problem if you write a column where you pick the single most important action movie of every year and write about it. Yeah, he was trying to decide between Predator, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, directed by John McTiernan, RoboCop, directed by Paul Verhoeven, and Lethal Weapon. And in the end, he picked Lethal Weapon, and that wasn't hard for me to guess. I was sort of waffling between that and Predator, but I figured Lethal Weapon would probably be it because it really sort of encapsulated very well the buddy cop genre, in which two very good partners at the police force, they team up. They don't really get along at first, but they win over each other's respect, and they end up working very well together to take down the bad guys. Lethal Weapon spawned 3 sequels. The first came out in '89, the second in '92, and the third in '98. Right? Yes. So yeah, they haven't done one since then. But there was a new TV series that premiered last fall, in which they recast the parts. Of course, with younger guys. I'm not familiar with the actor who played the Mel Gibson part, but the Danny Glover part is played by Damon Wayans, who also appeared in an action movie called Last Boy Scout that was written by Shane Black, the screenwriter of Lethal Weapon and a few other movies that you might know. Shane Black got a lot of attention for his script before the movie was made. If you're not familiar with the process of how movies get picked, the major studios basically have people working for them who select the movies. They're called heads of production. People, executive, decide, okay, that would make a good movie, but prior to them they have what they call script readers, people whose job it is to basically read through all the scripts that studios get and go, this one looks good, let me pass it along to somebody higher up and see if they want to do it. So Shane Black, this was the first script that he had gotten attention for. I'm not sure if he had written any prior to this, but it was a really big sale. They paid a lot of money for this script, and one of the reasons why people liked it so much, people worked for the studios, is because the script apparently appealed directly to them. I haven't actually read the script myself, but I took a screenwriting course, and the person teaching the course was talking about how this script had notes in the directed towards people who read scripts for a living, you know, trying to get them, you know, amused by that, you know, little inside jokes about the business, and just sort of appeals to their, you know, sense of fun and things like that, aside from descriptions of the action and the dialogue and everything like that. And so that made it really appealing for people who worked as script readers to read. And so that had a sort of advantage over a lot of other scripts that were just more written in kind of a dry, sort of all business way. You know, however stylish the dialogue is in any one script, when they describe the action, they're just basically plainly describing what you see and hear on screen, whereas Shane Black decided not to do that. He wanted to have a little fun with it, and that's one of the reasons why the script gained such popularity and why it's fetched a high price. Shane Black, of course, went on to write The Last Boy Scout, which starred Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans and was directed by Tony Scott. He also is responsible for The Long Kiss Goodnight with Gina Davis and Samuel L. Jackson. He apparently took a pass on Last Action Hero, which was another John McTiernan project. and then he became a director. In 2005, he directed Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and he's directed 2 more movies since then. The Nice Guys with Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling, which came out last year, and between those two, Iron Man 3, which is a movie that I like very, very much, despite what people have problems with what they did with a character called the Mandarin. It's a really, really fun movie. So yeah, he's very, very memorable for his dialogue, you know, and his plotting is really sort of complicated a lot of the time when it comes to, especially with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and The Nice Guys. Those are very, very complicated plotted movies. And this movie isn't quite so complicated, Lethal Weapon. It's got its moments, but aside from the occasional snappy one-liner, the real selling point for this movie, for me anyway, is the relationship between Murtaugh and Riggs. Murtaugh is the veteran who's married and has 3 kids. I think he's 50 years old. He actually turned 50 when the movie starts. He has a birthday. There's a great little bit about that where he jokes about his age and his wife's age, and his wife goes, don't say any more. Meanwhile, Riggs, who is the Mel Gibson character, he is definitely not at the same level of Murtaugh as far as his family goes. He had a wife, but she was killed in a car accident. He's been very sort of disturbed and despondent lately. He contemplates suicide in one of the first scenes of the movie. He has a hair-trigger temper, and he takes a lot of really, some would call unnecessary risks. Yeah, it's like he doesn't care. He doesn't care about, you know, getting killed. He kind of wants it. You know, he's in a lot of pain. And so this is how he meets Murtaugh when they're assigned as partners. Murtaugh is investigating the death of a young girl who plunged from a balcony in an apartment building in downtown LA. And there's some suspicious circumstances. And Riggs, Mergs, that's a good, condensed name for the two of them. I didn't think of that before. Riggs basically has this cocaine bust at the beginning of the movie, and he gets taken off narcotics and moved over to homicide, and so he's assigned Murtaugh as a partner. And Murtaugh's like, I don't know about this guy. And Riggs is just like, yeah, well, I don't know about you either. You know, you've got an old-fashioned 6-shooter when you can use a semi-automatic like me and have a lot more firepower under your belt. And the guy's like, okay, whatever. So they start working together, but eventually they start to get along well, even though Riggs tends to act recklessly. And he ends up shooting a suspect, and the suspect dies before they can really fully question him. But the guy was about to pull a gun on Murtaugh, so Murtaugh has to kind of say, "Thank you very much for saving my life." And Riggs goes, "I bet that hurt to say." And Murtaugh goes, "You'll never know." But about midway through the movie, they have a dinner at Murtaugh's house. Riggs is invited over, and he meets Trish, Murtaugh's wife, and he meets his 3 kids. 2 of which are in like elementary school, and 1 of which is in high school. I can't remember her name. They have a special credit for the beginning. Traci Wolfe is her name. I've never seen her in anything other than the 4 Lethal Weapon movies. Yeah, she's a teenager, and she obviously has a big crush on Riggs right away. And, you know, I mean, who could blame her? Mel Gibson's a very, very, very good-looking guy. Of course, this creates a little bit more tension. But when they're talking afterwards, they're having a couple beers after dinner and talking about the case and talking about how seemingly simple and perhaps not so simple that it might really be. As Riggs is leaving for the night, he says to Roger, he says, "You don't trust me at all, do you?" And Murtaugh kind of smiles very friendly, and he says, "I tell you what, you make it through tomorrow without killing anybody, including me or yourself, and then maybe we'll talk about me trusting you." And I think, actually, thinking back on the movie, Riggs actually does manage to get through the entire next day without shooting and killing a single person. Of course, the very next morning, he's taking out guys with a high-powered rifle, but at that point, Murtaugh is like fully on board because they're all real bad guys. The plot, nothing special. They've got these sort of black op guys from Vietnam, CIA guys who were importing heroin as a way of helping fund their own operations. And even after the war's ended, now in 1987, they're still bringing in heroin and making money from that. It's up to Murtaugh and Riggs to stop him. This is sort of a connection they make between these guys and the girl who jumped from the building at the beginning, because as it turns out, she was actually killed, or she would have died, basically, from the pills she was taking. They were full of drain cleaner. Someone had intentionally tried to kill her, and so they trace this back to the bad guys. So you've got those guys that they're dealing with, one of whom is Gary Busey, the lead henchman. His name is Mr. Joshua, which is a great name for a bad guy. So you've got that, you've got all the action scenes, the shootouts, the stunt work and everything like that, and they're fine. You know, there's nothing really wrong with them. There's nothing special about them. But what really makes the movie special, and why I enjoyed watching each one of those movies as they came out, was because of Riggs and Murtaugh, and especially their connection to Murtaugh's family. Riggs eventually gets his own a woman that he falls in love with. That's played by Renee Russo, but she didn't show up until the third movie. They also have this sort of informal partnership with a kind of irritating character played by Joe Pesci. He doesn't show up until the second movie. At that point, you know, from the second movie forward, the movie has become much more comedic and lighthearted, whereas the first one's pretty dark, with Riggs being very much on the edge and a bit suicidal and reckless. And there's still a lot of reckless behavior on his part, but it's all part of the fun, whereas in the first movie, it's actually something to be worried about. So although the series got kind of comedic, it wasn't really full-on comedy in the very first movie. And seeing the friendship develop and seeing the partnership develop between these two guys is really what makes the movie great. And I really enjoyed seeing the second movie and the third movie years later and the fourth movie, because it's like dropping in on old friends. Friends who, you know, are bickering occasionally with each other, but getting along really well, and the fastest of friends. And it's you know, it's fun seeing that start in the first movie. Because it's just like, you know, hey, Murtaugh doesn't trust Riggs. This just feels odd, because I've seen so many other movies with them where they're like the fastest of friends and the closest of partners. So yeah, Richard Donner is the director of this movie. I should talk a little bit about him. He went on to make a couple more movies with Mel Gibson, one of which was Maverick, which was a comedic western, and Conspiracy Theory with Julia Roberts co-starring alongside with Mel Gibson. He also did the original Superman movie with Christopher Reeve. That was in 1978, I think. He did The Goonies, a very popular adventure movie from the 80s. That was 85, I think. Right before Lethal Weapon, and you know, he went on to do a couple other movies. Like I said, he put Stallone and Antonio Banderas at odds with each other when they made Assassins in '95, and I think the last movie he made was 16 Blocks with Bruce Willis. This is a very good film. So yeah, of the three movies that Breihan was deciding behind, my clear favorite is RoboCop. I love RoboCop to death. One of my favorite movies ever. And I like, of the series, of the Lethal Weapon series, I really like 3 the best. 3 has the best villain. It has an ex-cop who's now an arms dealer, and he uses his knowledge of police tactics against the cops, so they're really, really eager to take him down. Yeah, I really like that movie a lot as far as just everything that happens in it. 2 I like. 1 I didn't like so much when I first saw it. And I think that the ending fight scene is pretty ridiculous. They finally cornered Gary Busey, the last bad guy left, essentially. But instead of arresting him right away, Riggs challenges him to a fight on Murtaugh's front lawn. and I don't know why they really dragged this thing out, because it just ended, you know, like the usual way. But it just, I don't know, it just seemed totally unnecessary and ridiculous, so I wasn't a big fan of it when I first saw it in high school. But I don't really value it as much for its action as I do for, you know, the character work and the acting and the dialogue between Riggs and Murtaugh, which is really what makes this series valuable. And this movie, the legend that it is, I guess you could say. I don't know how many other people are really fans of this series as well, or this movie, because I don't hear it talked a lot about, at least these days. I think it's spoken of mostly in disparaging terms because people don't like the sequels. That's what tends to happen with series like this. They focus on the sequels that aren't as well liked. I think probably the last movie is the one that people think is the most lame. But yeah, the 87 one's not bad. I do like the second and third one better. Third best of all. And I think I have that in common with Forkerball. I think he mentioned really liking Lethal Weapon 3. And I'm like, yeah, that's a really good movie too. I really enjoyed it. So So yeah, great. Sorry if this is a little rambly, but I had plenty to say about this movie. I actually guessed that one right, which was great. I was trying to guess his choices starting with 83 forward, and Breihan's pick matched mine, so that was kind of cool. So the next one is, of course, going to be 1988, and that means mother flippin' Die Hard, baby! Yeah, Die Hard's the next one. I'm not sure how long it's been since I've seen it from beginning to end, but I'll be rewatching it again next week. But before that, one more video for my series is going to be, of course, a decade summary, because I'm starting with the 8s each decade. 78 through 87 is going to be, there's going to be another summary video in which I pick the best of what I saw over the last 10 weeks. Yeah, I've already knocked 2 decades down. How about that? You know, in another 5 weeks, it'll be halfway, the halfway point. Yeah, it's something. This series is speeding right along. It's really making the year, trot by very quickly. So I hope you're enjoying this. I hope that you check out Breihan's article, which is linked below. You can find also the playlist, all these videos below, and my Facebook page and stuff like that. And please do check out Razor Wire Reviews and Forker Ball if you haven't looked at their work yet, because they're fun guys and they make great videos too. Thank you very much for watching. Next week we'll be back with Die Hard. I will see you then. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.